Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I have a wonderful guest with me, and that is Marina Pearson. Marina is a mum to Leo, best-selling author, international TED speaker, the joy of being podcast host, and mental advocate for hardworking mums. Her work has appeared on ITV This Morning, Marie Claire, The Daily Mail, and The Guardian. After years of searching, she finally came across the 3 principles that have significantly transformed her life, mentally and physically, and with her relationship with her son. Marina can be found running intimate retreats at her villa in Spain to free mums of the mental burdens they carry so they too can find some mum relief. So hi, Marina. I am so thrilled to have you back on the show. You're my first repeat guest. So
wow, I must be next time.
Exactly. Well, it's so funny because the reason I wanted you back, well, first of all, I want to thank you because you reached out to me a couple of months ago, is it now? Somewhere, anyways, however many weeks ago it was, around a question around narcissism. And you had heard that that's what I used to coach my clients in, is recovering from narcissistic abuse and codependency issues. And I had actually sort of put that aside for a while because I really felt that once I came across the principles that there was this sort of belief that, you know, there weren't diagnoses and personality disorders. And I wanted to thank you because I think that you helped me see that I had thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And in fact, this is a subject that is so important, and especially when it's viewed through the lens of the 3 principles. And just as sort of synchronicity happens, most of my clients lately have been coming to me with this issue. So yeah, I just want to thank you for that because it really it highlights an area where I feel that sometimes the misunderstanding of the principles can be, well, it's all you're thinking and you're taking things personally. And unlike physical abuse, which is very obviously, you see the signs that this is not okay behavior. With narcissistic abuse, sometimes it's so subtle, you just end up thinking, well, I must be crazy, or I'm taking things personally. So I think it's a really, really great subject to talk about. So what I want to hear from you. So what is it that you saw and what impacted you and changed your relationship?
So I'm so glad that my situation helped you to see something new, because I honestly hadn't really clocked that I was in that sort of relationship. There were characteristics of it. So there were things like he never apologized, he never took responsibility, he never said sorry. It was mainly all about him. Well, mainly, I guess it was always all about him, about how he was feeling. And anytime I really wanted to bring something up around how I felt, there was no room for dialogue there. There was no room for understanding. There was no room for wanting to understand me, or at least understand where I was coming from. It was really all about him and taking that really personally. So one of the things that he shared with me was I should never apologize for who I am. And so he walked around with that belief. And I didn't really see this very clearly until, interestingly enough, we kind of got together, split up. And I finally decided that I was done, because if he couldn't look after the very people that I care about, then what was I doing? And it took that to kind of really get me to see what I was dealing with. But I never really saw it as narcissism. I just saw it as, this isn't working. This really doesn't work for me, and I don't feel like there's a connection here anymore. And so we split, but he still lived in the house, and we weren't together we weren't really. We split, and that was that. I just carried on doing my own life. He started doing his own. And I met someone in the interim, and he found out and then kind of wanted me back, or at least admitted that he'd never really stopped wanting me back. And so with that in mind, I got really confused. I went through a period of massive confusion and self-doubt around what I was doing and whether or not I should go back. And it was really interesting in a conversation that you and I were having around this, because I was so confused. It looked to me like he wanted to change. It looked to me like he wanted things to be different, until I realized that was just a lot of hot air, and that actually that was never going to be the case. Mm-hmm. But there was an incredible sexual attraction. There was an incredible chemistry. And I got confused between what love actually is and the physical aspects. And so over time, I started to realize this is all that this is. And if I want that, then I stay in this. Or if I don't, if I want something deeper, if I want something that's more balanced, if I want something that will help me or support me, then I probably need to get out of this. And it was a conversation I had with you where it was a throwaway comment, but what I heard is, why would I be putting my happiness in behind anybody else's? Like, why would I forfeit that? And it became very clear to me that relationship had to go. And so since then, I had contact with him, and I just see it so differently now, because at the beginning he would be like, look, we need to meet up, and we would meet up, and then he would just go on and on and on about how awful his life is. And I would be sitting there going, well, I don't really know why I'm here. I thought we were going to talk about the work that needs to be done in the house still, and this and that. And I would walk away feeling like this is the same dynamic I've always been in. Like, he just wants me to sit here and listen to him and go, oh, for you. Mm. And there was one afternoon where he said, we need to meet up and talk. And I said, no, we've talked already. We've done all of that now. I think the best thing for you and I to do here is just not to see each other. And that was that. Mm-hmm. And so what I realized was, and since then, he's come back, asked me for money, if I could help him out. And in the past, I would have said yes. In the past, I would have just gone, sure, of course you can. Here's the money. And this time it was very much like, no, sorry, that's not going to happen. Yeah. I'm really sorry that you are in this situation, but I'm not going to be the one to get you out of it. And what was interesting was realizing that I can feel compassion towards someone, but I don't actually have to go in the hole with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, we had that conversation.
Yeah,
I think
exactly. I was describing the hole with the rope hanging out of it, and them calling, help me, and then we, as loving, caring human beings, pick up the end of the rope, hoping to help them, but we end up getting dragged into that hole with them. And again, I should have prefaced this that we're not diagnosing people. We're talking about a set of behaviors, and when we talk about the narcissistic behaviors. But it sounds like you saw something very, very quickly, which is really pretty amazing, because a lot of people that have, and again, it's a label, but codependency issues, or issues of codependency as in, not having clear boundaries and tending to sort of put other people's needs ahead of yours. These are classic qualities that usually bring you into that dynamic of the narcissist and the codependent dynamic. The narcissist is usually like sort of wants everything going their way. They have a lot of entitlement, and a codependent is usually lacking in that. And so there's this sort of inequality, but it is a perfect fix, because you both have sort of issues around boundaries. One has, both of you have no boundaries basically, but it sounds like you've really developed boundaries very quickly. I mean, you really saw very quickly that this was not something you wanted in your life. and that you had been manipulated, and you didn't want that anymore. So that's really pretty amazing.
Well, it was thanks to our conversation, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it was thanks to an awareness that I had around what I wanted and what I didn't want. And I thankfully have been, and it's interesting because there was quite a bit of shame around it too, where I was in a place of, I should know better. Mm-hmm. So I have been, working in the personal development world for so many years. I work in transformation. How is it that a girl like me would get involved with a guy like that? And I had quite a bit of shame around this, and felt really like, I didn't really want people to know, because I felt like I should know better. Mm. And what I then realized was actually it's okay, because I developed an awareness that I didn't have before. Yeah. I'd never really considered that I'd been in any kind of narcissistic relationships. And looking back now, there was definitely a pattern. In some of them, they weren't always that way, but over time, I started to develop a much better way of going, no, yes, this, that, don't want to do that, do want to do this. And there are still areas of mine that I realize that I still have a little bit of, I call them airplane trails, that there's still echoes of that codependency dynamic, where I can tend to not say what I feel, and when I do, it can be received in a non-loving, caring way. So I'm realizing that there are still airplane trails, but that I have healthier relationships than I ever had.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and it's so true. But the irony is that, for us that have been in this sort of self-help area or coaching or whatever it is, usually what attracts us to this job or this vocation or whatever it is the fact that we are caring, loving human beings, and we want to help people. And so we can all have our blind spots as to how much we help, and it's that. And that's what I love about the principles, is that it really points to the fact that we all have resilience. We all have innate well-being. We don't have to fix each other. We don't. So, before we might have fallen into those traps a bit of like, we're needed. We have to sort of like give a bit more or whatever it is. But I think remembering that every single one of us is okay at our essence, and it helps us not get seduced into that dynamic.
Yeah, and that's been something else to see too. I don't have to go around fixing everybody, because it's just, there is nothing to fix. Exactly. But also kind of looking at what is healthy for me and what I want and what doesn't work. And, it's the same thing. It's like when you get into a new relationship, you might see amazing things in that person and it's all wonderful. And then suddenly you start seeing things going, hang on, this seems a little bit familiar. How come that's still not changed? And I was thinking about this today. I was really like, it became quite neutral when I had this insight today. And it's quite synchronistic, actually, that we're having this conversation, because it's something new that I saw today, which is this. So we all have patterns of behavior and thinking, and when we go into a new relationship or a relationship that we're in, we all have them innocently, right? Exactly. And we either can take the opportunity to do away with them in the relationship, because you are both aware that that's going on and you're both repeating the same pattern again, and kind of have a choice of going, okay, there's a repeating pattern here for both of us. Well, that's interesting, and that's
Yeah.
kind of cool to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Which takes a lot of the blame out of it. And I was just
Absolutely.
sort of seeing that more clearly today.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or you have a choice to walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
And either relive that again,
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, or have a huge insight into going, no, I'm not doing that again.
Exactly.
That's something that I'm just definitely not up for.
Yeah. And it's I love that, because it's, and what you said was it takes the blame out of it, because that's, what I really also like to talk about is, narcissism is often bandied around right now like a dirty word. It's like as if it's a name calling word, but it's actually, there's quite a bit of suffering going on there. There's usually such a deep sense of a wound or a part of ourselves that is not enough, that they build this facade of superiority and arrogance, and they're special and they're entitled, and it's a defense mechanism. But it's become so solid that they won't even look at maybe that behavior is causing them pain. It's actually stopping them from having intimate, close relationships. But equally so, on the other side of the person that's staying in a relationship that's painful and causing suffering, you have to look at what your thinking is too, that got you into that situation, and what's keeping you there, more importantly. Because often in the beginning of a narcissistic relationship, there's all that love bombing we talk about, which is, so seductive for anybody. We all love to be adored and put on a pedestal. But it's once the craziness starts, setting in, the walking on eggshells and the gaslighting and all of that, it's like, what is happening within us? What thinking are we believing that keeps us in that environment, like you say, that is painful and it's as you said, it's like seeing that pattern again. It's like, oh, I have a choice this time, because you have clarity now. You see that the dynamic is happening again, if it is, and you have a choice to either, as you say, both of you work on your issues around that, what that dynamic is, or you have a choice to say, you know what, I'm not signing up for this one again. I'm
right
here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm seeing more clearly. But the other thing I'm seeing is that the other thing I got to see was that his, the ex, his, where he was at was where he was at. His way of seeing the world and being was more of an indication, not of who he was or is, but more of where he is in his own mind and consciousness. And it's more of an understanding of where that person is at, and whether or not you want to hang out with a person that's at that train station or state of mind, or call it what you will. But it's and I realized, no, I didn't. I wanted a deeper, more fulfilling relationship with someone that I could feel like I was in a partnership with them, and also feel that I didn't have to rescue them, have to be anything to them other than a partner, and that we could have lots of fun, and that while there might be moments of misunderstanding, there could also it would be an opportunity for us to deepen our understanding of one another.
Yeah, that's
and
so
maybe that's a
important.
very, very romantic viewpoint, but it's certainly something that I want to honor and hold to be true.
Oh, that sounded so grounded and healthy to me, what you just described. I don't think that's a romantic illusion that's not achievable. I mean, we're all going to sort of go from sort of high mood to low mood, and as we all do. But it's when it's reciprocal, when you're maybe in a low mood, your partner is there for you, or vice versa. When it's reciprocal, there's room for you both in the relationship. There's room for you both to sort of be there for each other and grow and have fun and trust each other. But when it is just one-sided, and it's like only room for one person's needs or desires to be met in the relationship, the other person ends up starting to feel resentment. And then that can't be healthy in a relationship. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been such a huge learning for me, and I'm so grateful that I've been through it. And even though it was really what could be conceived as very stressful at the time, there's certainly been a transformation for me there. And, you know, as I sit here in isolation, or I sit here in with my son in Spain, who knows how long this will last, I do have moments, you know, where I kind of go, what must it be like to be in a relationship for so many years with someone, and to be in this really special time with them, and to live with them, and to experience that with them. And I often wonder, I get kind of like, well, obviously that wasn't my path on this earth to walk.
Well, not so far. We could be sitting here in 40 years having the same conversation, and you would have been in a relationship for 40 years, and we could have another pandemic. So
maybe. But it's just interesting to me how for some of us that's not the thing, and for some of us it is.
Well, you're younger than me. I mean, I didn't meet my partner until 10 years ago, and when I was 51 actually. So
oh, really?
Yes. So
yet.
Exactly. And I have the most wonderful relationship now. But it took me to that age to really become healthy. And that again is, I mean, I was in therapy for almost 30 years and dealing a lot about my codependency issues and growing up in a narcissistic environment, and having that pattern of behavior at a very early age, where it was all about, you know, keeping you know, my mum happy, and pushing down my needs and my wants, even with a sibling, for fear of abandonment. And that was, I didn't realize I was still operating on that, even with my children. You know, I can see that I can be codependent around my children. You know, codependency as in, you know, you can be a little bit sort of enabling and put their needs ahead of yours, which is great when they're little. I mean, I think we should be doing that if we're raising children, is certainly, you know, taking care of them. But when they start becoming an adult and you're still sort of treating them like they're 5 years old, then I think there's a bit of an issue. But yeah, the principles really, really helped me see that because I used to take the behavior so personally. I mean, the rages and the outbursts and the controlling and all of that stuff. I kept thinking, well, if I twist myself in a pretzel, I can make this relationship better. And but after, you know, getting out of those relationships and not working on myself. I know we don't work on ourselves, but certainly seeing what my thinking was, what was keeping me in or repeating that pattern. And again, like you, not always. I had fabulous relationships that I always left, and then went into the sort of pendulum swung, and I went the other way into these narcissistic relationships. But it's achievable. I mean, once you see these things, you could never go back. I certainly.
No, and I also have a son who I want to have a good role model. So there is that too. And yeah, there are certain things that I do want. I want a family. I kind of want to feel like I'm part of a family unit. And it's just given me a lot of clarity around what I want and what I'm not, and what I don't want. And, you know, there's a lot of ideas that I might have around that, and then it shows up, and then you're like, no, I'll let that one go. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, actually, no, that doesn't get me very far. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's interesting because I never up until this year or last year, even the idea of being in a healthy relationship, I didn't even understand what that meant. Had no understanding of what being in a healthy relationship meant. And I'm seeing somebody at the moment, and we talk about healthy relationships and what that means, and what we want and what we don't want. And it's interesting to me because that kind of conversation was never even on the cards for me. And it's a new way of talking to someone about it. And I don't know, it's just even having an awareness that there is a thing called a healthy relationship, you know?
Yeah. I think it looks different for everybody, but I think there are some basics, you know, like if you feel that your needs are never getting met in the relationship, I don't think that can be healthy. I mean, I think, but again, it's such a spectrum. But I think also culturally, we're we're fed this sort of, you know, fairy tale of, even like sort of fairy tales like Beauty and the Beast. It's like, how do we win over the monster? How do we change them? How do we, you know, it's in fairy tales, and we completely get fed that. So we're always looking for that rush, that high of falling in love with something that's unobtainable, and we think that's love, and we think that that's, you know, I remember my therapist years ago, and I used to see him saying to me, it takes more than love to make a relationship work. It really does. And I think, you know, for me anyway, I kept thinking, well, I didn't get that, but I completely get that now. I mean, there's always going to be give and take. There's always going to be compromises made, but it's, you, like you said, there's lines in the sand that if they get moved and keep getting moved inch by inch, we talked about it before about the boiling the frog. You know, you're a frog in cold water, and you start inching up the water. And it's the same with boundaries that are getting pushed. If somebody doesn't respect your boundaries or pushes and pushes and pushes, you can keep sort of having that water, I mean, the heat turned up, and you just don't realize how far you've gone in moving your boundaries back to accommodate this other person. And before you know it, you know, you're dead. You're in boiling water and you're dead. So a lot of people that are in those relationships, they end up losing touch with what it is they want, what makes them happy. They don't even know anymore. They're so busy trying to, you know, accommodate or cater to the other person, they've lost sight of themselves.
It's interesting because as you're talking, I had an image of my mother and my father, and my mother being really accommodating towards my dad. And he was a typical English gentleman, I guess, but it felt more like it was her accommodating him and bustling around him and making sure that he was okay, and making sure that his dinner was always on the table. And yeah, so there's an element of having lived that, seen it, at least, as that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. That's where we get a lot of these ideas, is it's from our, you know, family of origin. We see a dynamic and we start either emulating it or reacting to it. Like I say, with a parent that can be quite demanding and putting their needs ahead of a small child's, you learn pretty early on, you know, my needs aren't as important. I have to cater to them. It's a learned behavior. So we lose sense of what, you know, of our own wants and needs.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, but you know what? We're going to be very slowly coming to the end here. So I just want to leave it with you. Just share a bit more about, you know, what you see for yourself and what you see for your future relationships.
Well, I definitely, I can definitely see that love isn't definitely enough. It takes a lot of understanding, and it takes understanding a combination of both. And I see this with my son a lot, where we can have a row, it's over and done with, and then we come back together and we talk about it. And, you know, often people is like, yeah, but he's only 5. And I don't see that in my son. I see a soul in a 5-year-old body. And often we have some really grown-up conversations. And I'm blown away by how grounded he is sometimes. Like, I'll give you an example. I was having a bit of a few bad days. Okay, I was like, and he tells me, he's funny. He goes, "Oh, here comes the crazy lady."
I love that.
And
oh my gosh.
And he then, you know, obviously, like, I had a go. He got upset. I said to him later on, I said, "I'm really sorry, Leo. I was just having a really bad day." And he just turns around at me and goes, "You know what, Mummy? We all have bad days. I have bad days too."
Oh, so sweet.
And I just get really impacted by his capacity to just share that with me.
Yeah.
And that's when I see, wow, it doesn't matter you have these moments when you get upset or you have a row or whatever, or you lose your crap. It's not about that. It's about the misunderstanding now being an opportunity for more connection, or a deeper connection, for more understanding. And that's what I see. Often we kind of go, oh, I can't, or I just had to go. But it's more like, there's nothing wrong in that, as long as it's human, right?
Yeah.
We have our moment. But what I see with Leo, and I see that there's an opportunity for him and I to both deepen our understanding of one another.
I love that
too. Not only from a child-mother perspective, but also from a adult.
No, absolutely. It's all relationships. And it is amazing. I love how our children are our finest teachers, but that's incredible. Well, I've loved having you back on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being vulnerable and being so of service to other people and helpful, because people hear this and they've reached out to me. They heard the interview you were interviewing me, and people reached out and were like, wow, that was so helpful. So I hope in turn this is helpful for even more people. And
I've had a few people reach out to me to say the same thing. They said it was really powerful. So I just wanted to give you back that feedback.
All right, fabulous. And I look forward. We're going to be doing another talk on codependency, and then I think we're going to. We are.
This has become quite a thing.
It is, isn't it? You and I, and then also the situation now with the coronavirus and the stress that can put on a couple that are already have some sort of dynamics that aren't as healthy as they could be, and how that is escalated with the confinement and being on top of each other, basically in a small confined space.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing that, actually, because there is a whole coronavirus series that I'm doing on my podcast to help mums through this time, because there is a lot of fear and there is a lot of sense of I can't cope. So,
wonderful.
I want to give them some hope in that regard. Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, well, I look forward to doing that one with you and seeing you soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at Adey-Jones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.